You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host Keith Engel on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, guys. Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk. How are you on this wintry Friday morning here in East Greenbush, New York? We are the first, and probably still the only live streaming webcast, sports webcast here in East Greenbush, New York. I'm glad you joined us. I want to start with my normal disclaimer, thanking all the groups that do allow us to share this to them. I've had some conversation with some of the admins, and listen, if I share this to your group, I promise you there'll be good content for you. Maybe not the whole video, or the whole interview, but there'll be really good content. Last week's guest, I want to thank Doug DeCince, former Baltimore Oriole, California Angel. We had a great hour of conversation. We could have gone on for 2 probably or more. I love getting those guys on. Great response from the Orioles and Angels fans to that interview. And some fans of the Rochester Red Wings, by the way. So that was fun. I will be doing more of that. Concentrating this week on NCAA basketball. We're getting close to tournament time. Lots of stories to talk about. My guest today is going to be Dick Weiss, Hall of Fame sports writer, covering the NCAA basketball for a lot of that. He's covered a lot of sports, but NCAA basketball has been his forte through the years. So I just want to I wanted to get Dick into now to talk about, as we head into tournament time. Just some of the stories that are out there, so who the top seeds are. I mean, some of the stories are obvious, but it's been a roller coaster season, right? With COVID and there's some other stories that we'll touch on. Some surprise teams this year, and safety has been a major concern. So we're going to talk a lot about that and more with Dick Weiss here in a second. Taped this interview last night, by the way. So, hopefully we don't have any technical difficulties. I'm going to be watching it with you here as I switch to the interview just to make sure. Again, thank all of you for watching. Please, if you aren't following the show, follow it now. Share it with your friends. Always some great content, I think, on especially Fridays with some of the interviews we do, and then the Sunday show as well. So I'll be back after the interview to talk a little bit more about this weekend show. Still working on a topic for my vlog for the week, but we'll talk about that and more as we come back. And right now I'm going to share the interview with Dick Weiss about the NCAA tournament coming up. All right, everybody. As I said, my guest this morning is Hall of Fame sports writer Dick Weiss. Dick's been covering the NCAA. I know NCAA basketball for a long, long time, but that's not all he covered. But you've covered it all pretty much, haven't you, Dick?
Yeah, believe it or not, I've been to 47 NCAA Final Fours, Keith. And I had been to 32 straight national championships in college football before the COVID era kind of interrupted all of these things.
Yeah, I'm assuming you're not going to make it 48 this year, right?
I thought about it, and I just got my first shot. So technically, I could probably go to the Final Four in Indy. It's just that there's not going to be any coaches there. You're not really going to have the ability to talk to the 4 coaches in the Final Four or the players that were there. I'm not sure if I want to spend all my time up in a balcony at Lucas Oil Stadium and then check in with a Zoom press conference afterwards.
Yeah.
I think part of the fun of being at this event is the fact that you feel so intimately close to the action, and it's not going to happen this year. They're not going to let any of the media get anywhere near the players or the coaches.
Yeah, I would think things are going to be buttoned down pretty tight once they
get there. It'll be the closest thing we've seen to a bubble, I think, since the NBA in July.
Yeah, the season, COVID's played havoc with scheduling and whatnot.
Sure.
Not anybody's surprise, right? A lot of teams have been on not just one shutdown, but several, right?
Every team in the Big East has been on pause at least once.
Yeah,
and some teams have been on pause upwards to 3 times.
Yeah, I read Iona played their first game in nearly 2 months last Friday, right?
They went 51 days without a game.
Amazing.
And it's impossible to gain any sort of rhythm. I mean, this is just a wasted season for a lot of teams. Look, I'll give the NCAA credit. They're trying to plow through this. I just worry about the health of the individual student athlete. I mean, we're going to see as much conservative an approach to this tournament as we've ever seen. I mean, it's all going to be played in one site at Indianapolis. The first rounds will be in different locations, but they're going to limit what the teams that are there can do. I know I have friends on the Villanova team. They played up in Bubbleville, and they were there for 7 or 8 days, and you couldn't leave the room. You couldn't wander on the floor. You couldn't go downstairs to the lobby without security. And if you wanted to go outside, you had to have security with you so you wouldn't run into any other team. Well, they survived it, but I think it's mentally tough on teams. And, you know, when they go to Indianapolis, you need 7 negative tests and just in order to go there. Once you arrive, you're basically – it's not like at least in the NBA they could go out and play golf or go fishing. Here, you're in your room the entire time.
Tough mentally.
Yeah, it's not like anybody's going to watch them play. I mean, I think they're going to allow the parents of the kids in, but they're going to limit the amount of media that can be there, and I don't blame them. And I'm not sure whether this is I mean, will I miss it? Yeah, probably, but I'm also not willing to put my life on the line for something like this. There's going to be other force.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the tournament. I mean, the look and feel from a TV watching standpoint, are we going to get the same feel with the different sites and that first couple of days?
Yeah,
right?
No, I agree with you. And the other thing that really there is a difference when you have people in the stands. Villanova played Creighton last Saturday. Creighton is the only team in the Big East that's allowing fans to attend. I think they had 2,200, but it sounded so loud. You're used to seeing all of these games being played before no fans, and it's so antiseptic when you watch the games. Here you actually heard fan noise in the background, and it was like, whoa, where did that come from?
Are they totally sold on no fans, or could that change, like New York's going to 10% here in the next week or so?
You know, they might allow – I've heard some estimates that they might allow each team to have 450 fans. But, you know, most of them will be parents. Suppose they give each of the kids 6 tickets. I mean, and then go from there. But there's going to be a limited market. I mean, limited attendance. I just don't see it changing this late. I mean, I don't even think they made a final decision on that. And you know, the Big East is playing its tournament down in the Garden. They're actually going to play in the Garden, but I don't know how many people are going to be allowed to see those games. They're all staying in one hotel. Yeah. I guess they're all going to try to keep them separate. There are 11 teams playing, and they'll probably try to keep them on separate floors. But
well, who's in charge of that decision? So is it the Big East themselves? So New York State allowing fans, but
yes,
on the final call.
Well, and the Garden, obviously. Yeah. You know, I mean, but I think that the Big East has been pretty conservative. I mean, the worst thing that can happen, can you imagine what happens if a team starts playing in this tournament, then test positive and can't get 7 negative tests in before they go to Indianapolis and gets invited to the tournament and can't play. Or if you're in the middle of the tournament, what happens if a seeded team like Gonzaga or Baylor test positive? They just forfeit the games and people just move on. There's a risk factor involved, Keith. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I would love to see the game I never saw before. I'd love to see Gonzaga Baylor. I mean, I thought that would be, that was originally supposed to be scheduled in December. We never got a chance to play it. I think that'd be a fun game to watch because the two teams that probably have been the most consistent all season are those two.
Well, if we do see that game, I mean, I guess a side benefit of COVID will be the only way we can see them probably is in the final, both undefeated, right?
Yes. Well,
that would be some kind of game.
That would be great. I mean, the only thing I did hear one story out there, and it was disturbing to me, involving teams from the West Coast Conference. There was some speculation out there that Gonzaga and BYU, who are the first and second teams in and feel they will receive bids, might opt out of the WCC tournament. If that happens, and in order to try to get a third team from the conference who might win the tournament in, the NCAA selection committee's got to change that rule. I mean, that's a bid steal. I mean, that conference does not deserve 3 teams. It probably deserves 2.
Right. And we talked a little bit about this the other day because I've been hearing the same kind of stories that teams that are certain of getting in were there was a chance they'd opt out of their tournaments. And I was kind of the feeling, and I kind of want to get your opinion on this. It's getting kind of late for the NCAA to make this edict, but this year anyway, maybe they should have said, look, the regular season champion gets the automatic bid.
I like that idea, by the way. I mean, unfortunately, there's also money involved, and I'm sure TV would love nothing better than to fill up their inventory by having teams on television. But, the idea of having the regular season champion get an automatic bid to the tournament, I mean, that's fine with me. I mean, look, last year when the Ivy League was faced with this problem, they canceled the tournament, just named Yale as the regular season champion representing the conference in the tournament. Now, the tournament never came off, but, things like that are going to happen. I wouldn't mind seeing things like that happen, particularly to schools in the smaller conferences.
Yeah, well, it would have protected, against what you talked about with Gonzaga and BYU, because that would be a travesty if at-large bids get taken away from teams that deserve it. Because
I totally agree with you. Totally agree.
Let's hope that doesn't happen. So let's talk a little bit about the season to date. Obviously, the whole COVID thing is what it is now. We're here. And we've gotten here on a rocky road. But from what we've seen so far, I mean, what are the big surprises? Take COVID out of the equation as best we can, right? What are the big surprises you've seen this year? Good and bad, I guess. I mean, the Blue Bloods are way down, right?
The biggest surprises are the fact that Kansas is the only member of the Blue Blood club that is still being ranked, and they were 23 this past week. They had the week before
didn't
it was a total wash. The 13 winningest teams in the history of NCAA basketball, none of them were ranked, and none of the classic Blue Blood teams like Duke, Carolina, Kentucky, Kansas, UCLA were ranked. I mean, Indiana weren't ranked, and most of them were going to struggle to get in the tournament. In addition, you had, there are 7 active Hall of Fame coaches currently coaching college basketball. The only one that has a chance to get to a second weekend is probably Bill Self at Kansas, and Kansas is no better than 4th or 5th in the Big 12. A lot of the rest of them are going to struggle just to get in the field I mean, Carolina probably gets in the field. Who knows what happens with Duke, depending on how they play the rest of the year.
Oh, they'd have to go on a big tear, would they? They'd have to go on a big tear to get in.
They would. They actually have a winning record now. They're 9-8. But you're right. There aren't a lot of games left in your resume. I mean, and let's face it, the ACC for the first time in a long while is not the best league in the country. I think most people would tell you that the Big Ten, which probably has a chance to get 9 teams in the brackets, is probably the best team and is probably the best league. And the Big 12 is probably the second best league.
Yeah. I mean, of all those teams that we just talked about that are struggling, I mean, is there one that surprises you that it's happened to them this year, or is there a common denominator with all of the teams besides COVID?
I think that if you really lean heavily on one and dones, then it's been a lot harder to reload this year than normal. I think we've seen it at Kentucky, we've seen it at Duke, we've seen it at Carolina. Look, we've seen it at Michigan State. Yeah. I mean, teams that have supplied groups in the Final Four are really struggling this year. And teams you would expect to be ranked are nowhere to be found. I think we could see an awful lot of teams in this tournament who are seeded much higher than they normally would. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way this season's gone. If you have an experienced team, if you have one big kid, if you have 3 or 4 shooters, it's probably the best way to approach a COVID season. And I think that there are a number of teams that we've seen like that. Gonzaga, Butler, Villanova to some extent, Creighton to some extent, Illinois to some extent. I mean, Iowa to some extent. If you have shooters, I mean, I think there's going to be a lot more points in this tournament than normal.
Let me. I mean, do you think that the one and done? I mean, is it an aberration because of COVID and the variance and the starts and stops have been harder on these young teams, or is this maybe a trend back towards? Because obviously, this has come to, in my mind anyway, we got to this point where the one and done's the proliferation of it because of John Calipari's success with it at Kentucky early on. Programs like Duke weren't doing that until recently.
No, and Duke is now doing it as often as Kentucky right now. I mean, I don't know if we're seeing the end of it, but I do think this. The teams that win national championships are usually teams with more experience. Take a look at the teams ever since Villanova, 16, Carolina 17, Villanova 18, Virginia 19, all upper-class people.
Yeah,
who are playing key roles, and very few freshmen being in the mix. I mean, look, if Duke couldn't win a national championship with Zion Williamson in 19, that probably tells you everything you need to know. Times have changed. I mean, I think there's a big difference between freshmen who have a high potential and probably are going to be taken in the lottery, and guys who have been through these conference wars for 2 or 3 years and kind of know what a coach wants, know what they expect, and know just how to grind games out defensively.
Yeah, I've always thought that one of the reasons and one of the exciting things for the tournament for me is, when the mid-majors, somebody gets on a good run. And I think the one and dones have kind of leveled the playing field for them a little bit because a lot of the mid-majors, they've got kids that have been there 2, 3, 4 years.
And most of those kids stay 4 years.
Yeah.
I mean, you take a look at teams that have a chance to do well. I mean, Houston has a nice team this year. They have a bunch of upperclassmen. Belmont has a bunch of upperclassmen. They're pretty good. I mean,
Loyola this year has got a good team.
I'm a huge Porter Moser fan, so I'm really happy. Yeah, he's a great coach. I mean, I mean, they've had a good run. I think Drake was having a great season before their best interior player, Tank Hemphill, got hurt. So I think that there'll be first weekend surprises. It's funny, most people really, especially people who play the cards, really root for the upsets in the first weekend. Not so many people want to see Cinderella in a Final Four. They want to see the big names that they've watched all season. Yeah. And but that first weekend, they'll go for as many upsets as possible.
I'm sure there'll be plenty. So we talked about you talked about some of the surprises on the mid-major level, and we talked mostly about the blue bloods who have surprised in a bad way. How about some of the surprises at the top of the rankings in the first 16 that were released the other day? Who really stands out to you as a surprise on the positive side of this?
Well, I mean, the fact that Gonzaga and Baylor have been ranked 1-2 for so long, to me, is a huge surprise because there's usually at least some changes. But they are both not only ranked 1-2, they're both still unbeaten. And if you look at Gonzaga's record, they only have 2 games left in the regular season. Yeah. They have St. Mary's and they have San Diego left. And Baylor's just really playing at a very high level. I mean, it's going to take a really strong performance by a team in a strong league to beat them because they've already won on the road, showed they could win on the road. I think it's going to be hard for anybody to beat them too. So maybe we'll get lucky. Now, if teams were to opt out of conference tournaments, in my mind, it would really challenge the integrity of an unbeaten season.
Yeah, I agree.
But I mean, so I kind of like that. I kind of like the fact that the Big Ten has got so many good teams. The teams in the middle of the Big Ten, they probably can't wait to get away from them. And and there's a chance that teams in the Big Ten and teams in the Big 12 will really surprise you. Look, it would surprise me if Oklahoma or West Virginia, either one of them got to a Final Four this year. No, both of them have terrific shooters. I mean, Austin Reeves is probably as good a shooter as you're going to see in the league. And Deuce McBride is probably the second most effective shooter that you're going to see in the league outside. Maybe Jared Butler, maybe third. But the point is that these are teams that basically have gone to a 4-out, 1-in. They're living off one big man and a bunch of guys who can spread the floor and make threes. I mean, and if you can do that, I think the biggest premium that a team can offer in March are shooters, perimeter shooters that can make threes. You've seen some nights. Look at Alabama. They had one night when they made 23 threes. I mean, they shoot that way. Who knows? They could win the whole thing too. I hope it's an interesting tournament, and I do believe that the 3-point shot is going to play a huge role in the outcome.
It's got to be one of the most wide open. Well, I mean, it's heavy at the top with Gonzaga and Baylor, though, but it still feels like one of the most wide open tournaments I can remember.
Well, I mean, you could have maybe 12 other teams that have a shot to get. Yeah. I mean, obviously, those 2 teams are the favorites to get to Indianapolis to the Final Four, but there's a good shot you could have for 10, 12 other teams make a legitimate run. I've always been a believer in the best team doesn't always win the Final Four, but the hot team in March usually does.
Yeah, good point. You mentioned Alabama a second ago. I mean, are you surprised by the success they've had there? And Nate
Oates. Yeah.
Nate Oates had there?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's funny. He doesn't even get a shot at this unless Bobby Hurley hires him as an assistant at Buffalo. And then he gets his own team and does a terrific job at Buffalo, sets himself up. And, he's got a team right now. If Jordan Bruner comes back, and it gives him an additional big kid to play with Herbert Jones, I mean, they have enough shooters. I mean, Petty and Shackelford who can light it up, and they can all make threes. I mean, it's scary. Like when Villanova won the Final Four in 18, they had 23 threes in the first game that they played against Kansas. Then they came back and they had another double-digit three-point game. Alabama's that type of team. Having said that, I don't know how good the SEC is this year. I know they have a lot of freak athletes, but Kentucky is not Kentucky this year. I mean, I think both Missouri and Tennessee have come back to earth a little bit from where they were in December. But Alabama is the type of team, and Alabama did lose in the SEC Big 12 challenge, but I still think that they're the type of team that could if they jump out on you and start draining threes, it's an uphill climb for any team.
It's funny. I seem to remember stories when Nate Oates went to Alabama from Buffalo that he wasn't going to be able to succeed in the SEC. He wouldn't be able to recruit, all kinds of negative stuff. And I don't know if you heard, or I'm sure you heard the same kind of things. Are you surprised that he's been able to?
He did inherit some pretty good players. Yeah. So in there 2 years. And he got the kid Bruner, who was a transfer from Yale.
Yeah.
I mean, but kids in Alabama is a magnet school. It's obviously a magnet school in football. And I think Alabama kids from Birmingham West are drawn to Tuscaloosa. I mean, the Montgomery kids might go to Auburn, but they play a style that right now is pretty exciting. I mean, kids want to play. Kids want to get up and down the floor. They want to jack up threes. They want to feel like they're a part of a sophisticated playground game. And I mean, he gives them pretty good freedom, don't you think, Keith?
Yeah, I do. Well, since we're on the Southeast Conference again, I think I agree with you. I think it's down. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could see them getting as few as three bids, depending on what happens.
I think a lot will depend on what happens in Nashville.
Yeah,
Kentucky's not going to get in, and I don't know what to make of Florida. They went through one stretch where they were playing exceptionally well. Now they've kind of slipped. I still think that Tennessee gets in, and I think there's a good chance that Arkansas was now 16-5. I mean, they have a legit shot. Missouri might be 6-6 in the league, but they have a good overall record.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, so you could get, it's funny. In the end, when you look at it, most of these teams from these cartel leagues usually get 4 or 5. The Pac-10 is the only team I've seen that really gets limited in the amount of teams it gets in.
Probably not this year, though, right?
What's that?
Probably not this year.
I would think that this year, both LA teams, I would say Stanford, I would say Oregon.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
All have a chance to get in. Arizona itself has kind of pulled the plug on postseason, and Arizona State's been somewhat of a disappointment in the way that they played. But the other 4 teams all have a legitimate shot.
Yeah, my bad. I thought you had said the Big Ten, and I jumped there. They're going to get a lot of bids. I mean,
Big Ten will get at least 9. They could. Right now, I think the teams that are on the edge there, probably Indiana, who still has a losing record, and Minnesota that still has a losing record and has a much better home record than on the road. But, I would be surprised if they don't get at least 8 or 9 teams in. At one point, a lot of people thought they might get as many as 10.
Yeah.
It's pretty much. And take a look at the top 10 this week. 3, 4, and 5 are all from the Big Ten. I mean, Michigan, Ohio State, Illinois.
a lot of those teams too are also building momentum. And Rutgers was awful early in the year, and I thought
they had a 5-game losing streak, and now they're back to winning. They actually are 8-7 in the league. I think he does a great job with it without great players.
Yeah.
When you look at their personnel, I mean, none of those kids came to school, with the possible exception of Cliff Amarori, the 6'10" freshman. None of them came with great reputations. I mean, Geo Baker was like a 2-star, and Ron Harper Jr. was never going to be mistaken for his father. But they have all come together. They're playing to their strength again. They're defending. They're rebounding the ball very well. Miles Johnson has been a revelation. He's probably the best defensive big man in the Big Ten right now. I mean, he rebounds well, blocks shots. If you can keep him out of foul trouble, he can be a game changer.
Team I want to ask you about the Big Ten, because I have an affinity for them, because Fran McCaffrey was here at Siena and really did a great job at Siena. It took them to a couple NCAA tournaments, which only happens every couple decades, right? Does Iowa have I mean, their defense is not that good. Do they have a chance?
My biggest problem with Iowa is I think they're so offensive minded. Yeah. Now, I'll say this: if CJ Frederick is healthy, and he'd been hurt in a couple games that they lost, you have him and Bohannon, playing with Joey Wieskamp, they're all capable of getting 20 in a game. And then you put them together with Luka Garza, who can score 26, 27 in a game. They have the ability to score 85 or higher in a given game. Their biggest problem, as far as I can see, is they're just not that good defensively. I mean, when Garza is in the game, he's a big body who will rebound, but I'm not sure if they have anybody that I would consider an elite shot blocker or a rim protector.
Yeah, that's their biggest problem. They're going to put up points, and they just got out scored every night.
They do. And Franny he lets them play, which is great. Yeah. I mean, I've known him since 9th grade, so I have a soft spot for him.
You guys went to 9th grade together? That's amazing.
Well, he went to. I was his dad was actually an usher at the Palestra. And his dad and his mom used to go to the games together every Saturday night. They're great people. His brother is a sports columnist down at the Delco Times. And Franny was a terrific high school player. It's funny, when he was a senior in high school, his dad called me, and we're trying to figure out where he should go to school. Stupid me, I said, well, I think he should go to Princeton, because he's got the best IQ of anybody I know. He's a fantastic passer and makes other people better. He always has the right attitude. He's very smart. The next day he goes out and gets 50. So that was the end of Princeton. He ends up playing in the Dapper Dan, and suddenly he's at Wake Forest the next year for a year, and then he goes back and finishes up at Penn.
He's a good guy. I met him a couple times when he was here at Siena around town. He's a really good guy in my mind. So, and a good coach too. So I always root for him. I have
listen, Siena has done a good job over the years producing coaches who have gone on to higher levels and been successful. Yeah,
for sure. And they got a shot at the tournament this year too. They're leading. The last I saw, I didn't look today, but they've had some COVID issues recently too.
Yeah, I know. Their biggest problem is they just haven't played a lot of games.
Yeah, and that's going to be a one-bid league, obviously. So they got to win the tournament. So let's just I'm going to run down a couple of these. Let's go. We'll take a look at some of these conferences. You tell me whether they're going to get one or two bids, or if there's going to be any surprises. The AAC, I mean, Houston's obviously the class of that league.
I think it's a long shot. I think that SMU would have to get to the final for them to get two bids.
Yeah, and Memphis, no shot.
I want to fall in love with them, but every time I do, they let a game slip away that you think they should have won. And they got off to a terrible start for a team that has, I think, pretty good talent.
He's done a great job of recruiting Penny Hardaway. I mean, is he a good coach?
You know what? We don't know yet.
Yeah.
I do think this. And when he first came in, I mean, he went out and he was competitive with everybody for players. They've signed some terrific kids. I mean, he has, I would say, maybe 2 or 3 guys that have a chance to play in the league.
Yeah. I think we had to know he was going to recruit well. It's a matter of whether he could coach the kids or not, right?
Yeah. So. I mean, I would think that that Kelvin Sampson, Tim Jankovic might be better coaches, and they're the teams in competition for bids.
Yeah. Move to the A10. VCU's got a good team. That's a one. I gotta believe that's a one.
I don't know. It's hard to say. I still think Bonnie's has a chance to make that a 2-bid leg.
They've struggled recently. VCU looks like a team that could win a couple games in the tournament, though, too.
They really play hard defensively. I think the coach has done a good job there, Rhodes. I mean, and the kid Bones Highland's turning into a real star down there.
It's another team that produces some pretty good coaches that move on to bigger jobs, right?
They do.
Yeah. We talked about the ACC a little bit. I mean, they're obviously down. I
think it's more a question of where will they be seated.
Yeah.
I mean, Virginia I think Florida State's very underrated. I mean, they went into this weekend 16, and then they played Virginia and beat them 20 down in Tallahassee. And Leonard's team always tends to peak at the right time, and he plays 12 players every game.
That team I
don't know of anybody that does that.
Yeah. He's a very underrated coach, I think.
Excellent. I mean, he's 72 now. He's been around. He was a real pioneer. But to think about the players, he's not only recruited for Austin Peay in Kentucky, but think of the programs he's turned around, like Oklahoma State, and then Miami. He got him to a Sweet 16. Yeah, he's gotten Florida State to an Elite 8. I mean, the guy does a good job, and kids like playing for him.
That team last year with the tournament getting canceled, I think they had a chance.
Well, it's funny. Dick Vitale and I wrote a book called The Lost Season, and guess who we picked to win it?
Florida State. They were really playing well. It was a shame. There was a lot of stories that got lost because of the tournament.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, look, they had 2 players who were just part of the cast who ended up going 4 and 14 in the draft, Williams and Vassell. I mean, who would have guessed that?
Nobody. Some teams that are on the bubble there. I mean, Carolina going to squeak in?
I think they are. I think they're 10-5 in the league right now. They can't beat Virginia. That will never happen this year. And they're probably not. I mean, I think the win over Duke was huge for them as far as kind of giving them some wiggle room. I think this league is going to get 3 or 4. I think Virginia Tech's going to get in this year. I think Carolina probably gets in. And then it becomes a question, Georgia Tech has just lost too many close games. They've been right there, but they've lost close games. And Clemson went through a stretch where they couldn't score any points. But they're playing better now. So maybe there's a chance for 5 in that league. I would think right now closer to 4.
Got to ask because of my geography here. I mean, if Syracuse were to get to the Final Four in the tournament of the ACC, can they squeak in or not?
Maybe. I mean, they're playing better right now.
Yeah. They don't have any big signature wins.
I don't see the same type of player in the program they had when Jim's teams were really nationally relevant.
Yeah, it seems this year they have no horrible losses, but no really good wins.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. And you know as well as I do, he's playing that first month of the season in the Dome.
Oh yeah,
he's not going on the road.
He never has.
No.
When it snows, he leaves town.
Right.
Let's jump down to the Big 12. I mean, again, another league that's really deep.
They could have 7 teams get in, 7 to 10 teams get in if Oklahoma State can avoid having the NCAA pass judgment with their appeal. I mean, there's 7 really good teams. I mean, and the game, much like the Big Ten, I think the games are appointment television. I think if you're home in COVID, they're good games to watch. I mean, I love watching teams like West Virginia and Oklahoma. I think that that game last Saturday was a classic. I mean, the 91-90 game in overtime, that was as good as it gets.
I'll tell you, one of my dark horses for the tournament would be West Virginia. I love Bob Huggins. And
I love the fact that he's doing it after losing his starting center.
Yeah.
Who transferred to Kentucky in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
He gets a lot of credit for changing the way that they play. I mean, and now he's relying on his shooters, and guys like Sean McNeil have really stepped up. I mean, they're a fun team to watch. And Culver's usually good to go for like 25 and 12 in any Big 12 game.
And how about Texas? Are they for real?
They have NBA talent, but they don't always play like it. I mean, I don't know that they're quite good enough to win on the road against Oklahoma, Texas Tech, Baylor, and maybe I don't know. I don't know what to make of them. The same way I don't know what to make of Kansas.
Yeah,
I mean, I think they get in, but I'm not sure how long they stay in.
Big East, kind
of a down year for the Big East, but they still have a chance to get 5 in. The team that probably is the biggest surprise to me in the last 2 or 3 weeks is St. John's.
Playing great basketball.
I mean, they are playing sensational basketball. I mean, they get 93 on Xavier the other night, and that was really impressive. I mean, their guard play and the play they're getting from Champagne is huge. And I've always liked his style. If he can get up and down the court the way that they used to when he was an assistant at Arkansas to Nolan Richardson, they're a tough team because they really guard you and they really run the floor well and they know how to finish. And they're getting better all the time. I mean, I have to believe that the kid Posh Alexander has a good shot at being Rookie of the Year. I think the kid Champagne has a chance to be first team All Big East. I mean, he's got good players this year, and he's made the most of them.
Yeah, and you mentioned their defense. I mean, they play from the time you get off the bus. They really shook up Villanova 2 weeks ago in the game at Queens. I mean, they took Gillespie completely out of the game, and when that happens, you have a pretty good chance of winning. Yeah, they've been Villanova hasn't seemed the same since that game either. So,
well, I mean, they played great against they have Marquette recently. They played great.
Yeah.
They have 2 big games coming up. They have Connecticut and Johns Tuesday both at home. They'll tell me a lot about Villanova.
If you had to make a call and say Johns, are they going to get in?
I think they are. I mean, look, it would help if the more wins they can get, the better off they are. But if you ask me to pick 5 teams that would be in the thick of it, I would say Villanova, Creighton, Seton Hall, Connecticut, and St. John's are probably the teams right now that have the best chance to get in. I liked Providence at the start of the year, but they're 11-11 right now, so I don't know where that stands.
Yeah, how much before I go on here? I mean, the committee, how much credence do they put on how momentum, how well somebody's playing right now? Maybe they don't have the best.
I think this is one year that if you're on the committee, you should be forced to use the eye test because teams are playing an unequal amount of games. You never know the level of play that they're experiencing night in and night out in the big conferences. I think you need to actually look at the teams and watch them play as opposed to just use numbers. You can get numbers to tell you anything.
Sure.
And I'm really kind of down on that. I like the idea. Look, if you are a college basketball fan, you know when a team's playing well. And I think that that's something they need to work on. And you also worry about the fact that these Power Five conferences in the Big East are going to control most of the bids. I would hate to see Drake and Loyola, because they don't have what is considered classic wins, eliminated from the tournament if they both end up with 22 wins in the regular season.
You think they both should be in?
I would, yeah. I think Drake really helped themselves when they got a split in the second game with Loyola this year.
Yeah, I had a feeling that they may have been in the outside if they hadn't got that win.
I think if they had been swept by Loyola, it would have been a one bid league.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to skip through some of these one bid conferences. Big Ten, we talked about a little bit. Anybody in the bubble that you can see making a run? You mentioned Indiana.
I want to,
Minnesota can't win a game away from home.
They can't win it. They can't. They just went on the road yesterday and they didn't win. I mean, at home, I mean, Carr and Robbins look like they're world beaters. I mean, you have a 7-footer and a great guard, and they play really well in the barn. But you take them on the road, and you can shut one of those players down. I mean, this league is hard because so many teams have big kids who can play a little bit, and so you go on the road, it's a lot harder.
Patino in trouble there if they don't have a good.
It's hard to say. I mean, for me, he's never really been able to get the best player in Minnesota,
right?
Which is disturbing to me. He's always close. I mean, look at the only team that's beaten Michigan this year.
Yeah.
I think in a lot of these conferences, you're going to start being judged in a pass-fail type of thing. You either make the tournament or you don't.
That's what it's all about. It's all about making the tournament and winning.
The NIT is not. It might be a consolation prize for some teams, but not the big schools.
Yeah. How about, let's see, let's move down to, we'll talk about the Metro Atlantic real quick, just because of Siena. I mean, Siena's I think they're the favorite. Yeah. Where's the tournament being played this year? I don't even know. Used to be played here in Albany almost every year, but I don't think
and it may be played there again. I wish I could tell you because, they were talking about playing on campus sites for a while, and I don't see them playing in big buildings. Do you?
No. They play in the TU Center here, which, holds 10,000 when they play in Albany. Right. It's the only place local.
Well, at least they can play there. Somebody mentioned it. Is it possible it could be in Trenton this year?
It's possible because, that's a league that, I'll be honest with you, they come to Albany, they sell that arena out.
Listen, I mean, Siena has an enormous following.
Yeah.
I really admire that. They've always had. I mean, if they get to a semifinal, you're set up to have 8,000 in the stands.
Yeah.
I mean, most of these smaller conferences can't do that.
Well, anytime I watch them, I don't want to spend the whole time talking about the MAC conference, but I mean, every time they move it to Buffalo or they move it to somewhere else,
no, Bridgeport, Buffalo, no, nobody comes. I went to a MAC tournament in Buffalo one year, 2,000 people. Nobody comes.
Yeah.
I mean, you hold it in Albany, you're probably going to average maybe close to 8,000.
Yeah. Have you been to a MAC tournament here?
I haven't, because it's usually the day before the Big East starts in New York, and so I tend to go to the Big East.
Well, I can see why you gravitate there. It is a good atmosphere, though. It's a fun week when they do play.
Oh no, and I like the fact that they get it over before the Big East starts in the Garden.
Yeah.
A lot of times they have had the winner of that league show up midway through the Big East tournament just to make the media rounds because they know that they can get a lot of media out of it. And probably well deserved. If you're in New York, somebody's going to write about you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So Missouri Valley, we talked about Loyola, Drake. They're the only two teams I would think that have got a shot there, right?
Yes. I mean, early on I thought Valpo, but because they've been so competitive with those teams, but they don't win any of those games.
Mountain West is interesting. They got a shot at
the Mountain West has got 4 teams that are all pretty good.
Yeah.
Boise State, Utah State, Colorado State, and San Diego State. They're all pretty good. I mean,
but they're not going to take 4 teams from the Mountain West.
They're not going to get 4 I'm going to be conservative and say 2, but I wouldn't be surprised if they got 3. If Boise State was the 3rd.
Interesting. It's a fun league too. Like if San Diego State's that's an underrated program. They played great for a lot of years now.
They have, and they've gotten really good coaching, and I think Jim Dutcher has prolonged that stretch.
Yeah, done a great job. If you talked about Belmont in the Ohio Valley, there's a team that could go win a few games.
They could.
Right?
They could. They are 48-4 in the last 2 years.
Unbelievable. And they're always dangerous in a tournament too. It seems like every year they have they have a chance in that first round.
They do, huh? Well, they played Temple in the first round 2 years ago and knocked them off.
Yeah. Pac-12 we talked about already a little bit. USC I think is an underrated team myself.
If USC had been completely healthy from the start of the year, I think they'd only have 1 loss.
Mm.
They only have 3 now, and they have 2 in the league, right?
Yeah, 2 in the league. Yeah. And
they're 11-2. Look, an LA team has not won that league since 2013, and it's usually UCLA. But those brothers, the Mobley brothers, are exceptional talents. Evan Mobley, I think, has a chance to be the number 1 pick in the draft before it's all said and done. I know everybody's talking about Cade Cunningham and talking about Jalen Suggs. I think this guy has a chance to be the number 1 pick overall.
And what about UCLA? Has Cronin got them going in the right direction here? I find it odd. I
wish they had more shooters. Yeah. And there are times when he plays where he goes back to his roots at Cincinnati and starts trying to play 60-point basketball. Yeah. Out on the coast, they want to play 80-point basketball. They want Lakers Showtime basketball. And they want your teams to play that way. And, I think Mick is a very good coach, but I do think there are times when he micromanages his talent to get the most out of him. And if you take a look at him, I'm not sure how many. Chris Smith, who was his best player, is hurt and he's out for the season. The kid, Johnny Jangsing, who was a transfer from Kentucky, is starting to play at a very high level for them right now. They have a solid team, but when they played at USC the other night, they only scored 48 points.
Yeah, you mentioned also Arizona State and their struggles, and Bobby Hurley really hasn't gotten it going out there since he's gone.
I'm surprised that. They've been a major disappointment. Most people thought they picked them to win the league because they had all fallen in love with Remy Martin, the guard out there. But it hasn't. Their bigs haven't really done much, and they do have good freshmen. Christopher's very good, but not good enough to win the big games when they've been faced with them.
Yeah, I got to think he's got to start winning some of those games, or the heat's going to get turned up pretty good.
Yeah, especially he's going to get a break this year only because Arizona has put a self ban on postseason play.
Right. What else? So any of the other, as I go down here, West Coast Conference, obviously we got Gonzaga and BYU. They're both going to make it, right? So
most probably. I mean, if St. Mary's were to get a win at Gonzaga, maybe it could change things, but I don't think anybody's beaten Gonzaga this year in that conference.
They're really good. Really good.
I mean, they have in that league, they have 4 players who could be the best 4 players on the floor at any one time.
Yeah. And I will ask you about the WAC because, Grand Canyon has played really well. Dan Marley's the coach there, if I'm not mistaken.
No, they switched coaches this year.
Did they moved him out? Oh. Yeah. Who's the coach?
Bryce Drew.
Oh, Bryce Drew.
Who used to be at Vandy.
Yeah. They're playing pretty well.
They are.
Basketball.
But, I think it's hard for anybody but the winner to get a bid there.
Yeah. One bid conference, I get you. So, give me one team. Give me your Final Four.
I don't have it yet. It's too early.
You don't have it yet?
No. Do you?
Yeah, well, it's hard, obviously, since we don't know the brackets, right? But right. I like Florida State to get there.
Okay.
Gonzaga, Baylor. And then I guess it's going to matter. I guess I got to see the rest of the matchups, but I'll say I'm going to go with Iowa.
Interesting. Yeah, I can't pull the trigger on Iowa. It'd be easier for me to pull the trigger on Michigan or Illinois.
That's probably a heart pick more than a head pick.
That's okay.
You got to have one of those, right?
Of course.
Let's talk about real quick. I do want to talk about the book real quick, but I got to talk about Jalen Johnson real quick. I mean, what's your take on that? I mean,
I think he got bad advice. I think he made a terrible mistake. Yeah. Here's a kid who transferred from 3 different schools in high school.
Yeah.
Now he's a freshman, and because he played 8 minutes against State in Saturday's game. I think there were a lot of people in his posse who probably told him, why do you want to hang in there if you're not going to become a starred player? And it's only going to hurt your stock. What he doesn't realize on the flip side is that general managers are always interested to see how you deal with adversity. And I don't know that I would waste a lottery pick on somebody who would bail out in the team.
Yeah,
look, the same things happened with the kid Terrence Clark down in Kentucky. Well, he's technically hurt, but he's not going to play again.
Dick, to me, it happens too much on college football and college basketball where these kids
I'm really against the whole college football thing. I think that
they bail out.
It's a team sport. You don't play for a national championship. Suddenly you're not going to waste. You're going to prep for the combine and not play. I just never thought that I still think if you join a team and you accept a scholarship, you need to be part of the team. I don't like the idea of people just walking away from a bowl game or even from the end of the season if their team isn't any good. I just think you basically are walking out on your teammates.
I agree. I mean, a lot of people give the universities grief for using these kids, right? But the kids are using universities just as much. And, you're getting that high profile.
You know what? The school still markets you. Eventually, you're going to get paid some sort of money. You're getting a full price of scholarship to begin with. If they ever pass the licensing deal, there's going to be opportunities for kids to make money. Yeah. If they can cut their own deals. I mean, then the best players are going to get it anyway. Yeah. But I really think we're not watching college sports anymore. We're almost watching like semi-pro football when kids start doing this type of stuff.
I agree. And it gets old for me. I mean, like you said.
I'll tell you what, people are are going to start turning away from the sport if the stars walk away from it.
You said and again, we're talking about basketball, but you mentioned football. If they don't get play for a national championship, they walk away. But I've seen teams make the Final Four playoff and they don't play. Get kids opt out.
That's scary.
I mean, it makes no sense. I mean,
no, I don't think.
It's not fair to the schools, the fans,
right,
teammates. It's just not fair.
I mean, yeah. I mean, everybody tries to justify it, but I don't think there really is any justification for it.
Well, I gotta agree, Dick. Before we end, you mentioned your book, and I know you mentioned it when I had you on back in the fall too. The Lost Season it's available. Can we get it on Amazon?
You can get it through any Dick Vitale website. And I finished another book that's coming out called From the Bench to the Boardroom, which is a story of a player by the name of Mike McDonald, who was a member of Rutgers' first NCAA tournament team in 1975, ended up spending a couple years working with Jimmy Valvano, and then got into sales for Xerox and ended up becoming the president of North America, of Xerox North America. So it's a nice feel good story about guys who were able to kind of turn what they learned in athletics into success in the business world.
And where can we get that one?
You know what? You'll be able to. I mean, that's coming out this spring. Yeah, no, I think it'll be in any Barnes and Noble. You can get it on Amazon. You can pretty much get it anywhere. They really want to promote it. I'm hoping that they just say, maybe we need to get away from politics and have a feel good story out there. So that would be a nice thing. What a shocker!
Yeah. God forbid we should have a feel-good story, for crying out loud, right? Well, I got to get The Lost Season. I want to read that one. I hope it's on Kindle on Amazon because I'm going to look for it tonight.
I'm sure it is. And the best part about it is all the money goes to the V Foundation.
Oh, that's awesome! It's a great.
And Dick is very good about that. I mean, we both signed on, and I took X amount of money. But as far as the money that they make after publication, we're going to try to put as much money in the V Foundation's pocket as possible.
He does a great job.
Dick has really done a good job promoting it.
I got to tell you a quick story. I reached out to Dick Vitale, not thinking I'd get any response at all about coming on TGI Sports Talk, my little show here. And he got back to me and said, I'm a little busy during the basketball season, but I'd love to come on at some point. So at least he got back to me and gave me
He's a nice guy. The work he does for pediatric cancer and childhood cancer is just unbelievable. I mean, they had a gala last year, a virtual gala.
Yeah.
He made $7 million for the V Foundation.
$7 million. God bless him.
To me, I think that's as much of his legacy as anything else, what he's done for children.
It should be. It has to be. It has to be.
I think it's a nice thing.
Yeah, so I'll continue to promote the books on TGI.
All right, no problem.
We'll do that. So listen, I appreciate you being with me here today, and I got to talk to you about something after we get done here. But I appreciate your time as always, Dick. You're the best of college basketball guy I can think of to come out and talk about it.
It's nice talking to you again, Keith.
All right.
Enjoy your night, okay?
I will do that. Don't go away, though. So that was Dick Weiss. Dick is a tremendous guy's just a tremendous the knowledge base that he has about the NCAA is second to none. And I always go to Dick. He and I converse a lot during the season. He's got knowledge about college sports and sports in general, but NCAA basketball, the coverage that he has provided for decades now to the New York Post, to the New York Daily News, the Philadelphia newspapers, bar none. He is just a great writer, and he knows it all. He covers all the leagues, as you can see. Dave Gayette saying goodbye. Have a great day, Dave. Some of you that have been in the room today, Ken Gifford, Brett Cloutier, my dad, Bob Engel, and my stepmom, Jeanette. Thanks for coming by. Be safe if you guys are going out later, as we talked about. Anybody else that's been here live during the show, I appreciate it. Look for Dick Weiss's books, as he mentioned, The Lost Season. I was just looking for it on Amazon last night, and unfortunately, it's not on Kindle yet. But will be looking for it. And the book from the boardroom from the bench to the boardroom really looks like a good book as well. That followed that Rutgers team as a young man, and that was an exciting season for Rutgers. And you know what? They got a good team again this year. This year's tournament has got a chance to be so wide open. It's going to be so much fun. And it's a shame we lost last year's tournament to go back to the lost season. That's what that book is all about. And there were some great stories that didn't get a chance to play out. Dayton, Rutgers, Florida State. Rutgers and Florida State are going to get a gimme this year, and they'll get a chance to maybe make good on the promise that was there last year that was taken away from them. Dayton, unfortunately, will not. But there's lots of other stories, I'm sure, that will unfold in this year's tournament. And it's been a lot of fun talking to Dick. Sunday, we'll be talking more NCAA basketball. We're going to start getting into baseball more, of course. But NCAA basketball will be a big part of our conversations on Fridays and Sundays going forward. I think my vlog this week, I've debated about doing it, but I think I've got my topic, and it's probably going to be a little controversial. So I already got in trouble with a post I put in one of the Duke groups already. So anyway, thanks for watching us on Northeast Streaming Sports. You can catch us all on. You can catch the network on iTunes, on Spotify, on Amazon, on pretty much iHeartRadio. It's everywhere. If you can't watch on Facebook or YouTube live and watch the videos, all the shows translate very good to the podcast. So all of us got access to podcasts today, right? Watch the shows there. It's just really good stuff. And there's a lot of good stuff coming in the future as well. So with that, I want to thank Dick Weiss. And we'll be back next week. My guest on Friday will be Matt Brust, former St. John's guard, I want to say. If I'm wrong, I'll correct that in my promo. But Matt has agreed to come on. We're going to talk about the St. John's, this great St. John's legacy. Interesting, we talked quite a bit about St. John's with Dick today. But Matt played for the great Louis Carnesecca and played with some great players there at St. John's. So we'll have him live. I'll be live Sunday morning. You guys all have a great week. See you soon. Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk. Have a great week.